here's the statement. I can get down with the Niners weren't good enough. I can't get down with the Niners aren't good enough. And that determines your whole offseason.
Who said they aren't good enough?
Well, Steiny.
Put the name on it.
Every
Herm
player.
Edwards. You got to put your name on it.
Have I ever told you the Herm Edwards story?
Save it for the stream.
Yeah, I'll save it. Are
we
we
getting
doing that again?
Coming. I think we have a Utah game this week, don't we? Thursday?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, I think you're right. Anyway, I don't know if there's going to be a stream. Why is Farhan signing Blake Snell?
Who knows?
No stream. They're not signing Blake Snell.
All right.
Anyway,
you're in trouble.
No, but what do you think of that statement? Because if we go with what I just said to them, which is that I feel like, and I might be wrong, but this is what I will go into the offseason with. This is, we want to call it woulda, coulda, shoulda, whatever. It doesn't matter. I thought that this was a pretty damn evenly matched game that went to overtime. And when you have that, it always comes down to a few very, very memorable key plays. And the Chiefs made their handful of mistakes as well. They fumbled the ball 4 times, including once in the red zone.
And a third down penalty that kept the Niners alive.
And a pick.
Yep.
Right? All of those things. So they would have their woulda, coulda, shoulda too if the game had gone the other way. But I feel like I could write down on a piece of paper 4 plays at least. And I'm sort of just coming up with that number.
Sure.
Off the
it's
top
probably
of
closer to 8.
Yeah, it might be. But at least 4 plays I could write down that are razor-thin plays, and if they go the other way, the Niners win the football game. That tells me I don't want to hear that they aren't good enough. They weren't good enough that day. But to say they aren't good enough to win the Super Bowl as currently constructed, I think is a mistake. I don't think you go into the offseason thinking wholesale changes or conceptual changes. All this BS, Kyle needs an offensive coordinator. They need to do it totally different. No, they don't need to do it totally differently. I'm with you. Every year has a couple of tweaks. I would like the offensive line to be stronger and perform better. That's where I would start. But this idea of conceptual changes around the Niners, no, they're good enough. They just weren't that day. They messed up some key spots, and they weren't that day.
The conceptual changes would involve the individual who has the concept, and he's not going to change his concept. So you have Kyle Shanahan installed as the head coach, and he got an extension, so he's here for, I think, 3 more years, maybe 4 more. I think it's 24, 25, 26, and maybe 27. Either way.
It's a lot. Yeah.
It's a lot.
I don't even know. Yeah.
There are years where Kyle's going to be here. And so the conceptual changes have to do with the concepts of the guy running it. Mm-hmm. And his concept is run the ball, 21 personnel. They do it almost more than any other team in the league. He loves his fullback. He loves his tight end. And you have 2 wide receivers, and you have a quarterback who's accurate. That is his concept. Now, defensively, you might have some changes. And personnel-wise, you'll have some changes because you got 19 free agents, right? Unrestricted. You might sign half of them. You might sign a third of them. You're not going to bring all of them back. And I know cap-wise, they're already in a little bit of a tough spot going into next year. You're going to have to rework some deals and do what you do. But the concept will be the same. Now, are you not good enough in general? I think that is a little misguided because, as you mentioned, for the last 5, you've been one of the last 4 teams playing. So it's hard for me to say that you aren't good enough. Now, you weren't good enough.
Sure.
And you weren't good enough 4 years ago. And we could look at 4 plays from Sunday. We could look at 6 plays, 8 plays, whatever you want to look at. And yeah, there were plays that if they made them, they win. And it's the same thing as 4 years ago. And that's what's frustrating is you haven't made those plays. Emmanuel Sanders and Tyreek Hill and George Kittle from 4 years ago. And this time, it's Spencer Burford, who's now going to be the new buzzword.
Luter.
All that, right? Yeah. And we're going to have these names and these plays, but they aren't making the plays. And that's what's frustrating.
Yeah. Although they also are. You know, that's the other thing.
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
Like, you also, maybe we're 4 plays away from the Chiefs won by 14. Maybe we're 8 plays away from the Niners won by 10.
Sure.
That's
football.
That's football when it's tight like that. When you've got 2 heavyweights batting it back and forth. That's frustrating to me sometimes. Like, You lose the game, and that's what I mean. Like, there is this overwhelming difference in the way that we look at every individual out there based on the final score. So that's what I was driving around hearing today, right? Ayuk and Debo didn't play like champions. Mecole Hardman did. What? No. Like, the ball got thrown to Hardman, and he caught it, right? Debo got open in the end zone. He got overthrown. Ayuk got open in the end zone. No one ever saw him. They missed a block. All of these things do mean you didn't execute well enough, so you didn't perform. But it's sort of like, I don't know, looking at a day of the week rather than the whole month or the whole year, right? Did your relationship have a bad day? Did you have a fight? Or even
a bad hour.
Or do you need to break
10
up?
Minutes,
like, do you need to break up?
Yeah.
Like, this relationship isn't working. And I think that's the overreaction that you hear a lot right now. And forget it, quite frankly, for me, when it's out there in the media, our good friends over at Fox Sports Radio, every single one of them has the stupid thing on Instagram about how Kyle should be fired. It's like...
Not your partner.
No. Rob Parker, Ben Maller. I'll go ahead and name him. Yeah. You got to fire him. Okay.
Nick Wrong?
I haven't heard from him. But
yeah.
Anyway, like...
Rob Parker.
I know what those people are doing, and they know what they're doing.
Right.
And nobody who really has a cogent thought about this whole thing thinks that that's a possibility or thinks that that should happen. I'd be more interested in the conversation of, do you believe that Kyle Shanahan should just keep doing what he's doing? Don't get me fired. He's not getting fired. He's not hiring an offensive coordinator. But haven't you also heard this a bunch? Kyle never learns. He's never going to learn. I don't think he needs to learn anything. I think he needs a day where everybody just is more buttoned up and they go out and execute. And maybe you blame him for that, and that's fine.
Yeah.
But do you really believe that as constructed is good enough, or do they need to do something differently?
Nothing drastic, but I do think that Kyle needs to button it up. And I think you used a good phrase there in terms of what they need, because you had guys not knowing the overtime rules. You have players who are fighting on social media. You have a wide receiver who's under contract, who is using his brother and his partner to go out there and basically already send up signal flares that maybe he's not happy about the amount of targets he got and the way he was used. That, to me, Mark, is not being buttoned up. And I know when you lose, you have hard feelings and people are going to act the way they're going to act. And you talk about Trent Williams with back-to-back penalties, and you had a false start derail, and you had a muff punt, and you had a blown assignment. All these little things, that to me does fall on Kyle Shanahan in many ways.
I mean, on some level, yes.
Attention to detail.
Well, sure.
And that's why they lost the Super Bowl, is they did not pay attention to the little details, and your penalties killed you, and the muff punt killed you.
So I guess,
and a blown assignment when you needed it the most killed you.
I don't disagree, but this is where my mind goes. Okay, let's say that in overtime, Niners are up 22-19. Bosa breaks free for a blindside sack, and he just beats his man. No blown assignment. He just beat his guy, and he causes a fumble, and Armstead falls on it, and the 49ers win the Super Bowl. Were the Chiefs not buttoned up, and Andy Reid, therefore, because they made that same list that we have in our head?
It depends on if the assignment was blown.
The Chiefs have that list too.
Right.
Mahomes threw a pick.
They fumbled 5 times, Mark.
Pacheco fumbled and one in the red zone. And that penalty.
Mahomes fumbled twice. Pacheco, James, and Rashee Rice. 5 fumbles.
And James actually kind of fumbled twice, didn't he? I mean, Didn't he? He dropped the ball and then he got it back, popped up in the air. Anyway, this might be the most under-discussed thing about the whole overtime discussion that we're all having, which is that the Niners went 3 and out. They went backwards. They got the ball, and they went backwards. And only because a Chiefs defender held Juwan Jennings did that drive even think about continuing so that we could get to the point where we can talk about Chris Jones being unblocked and Burford's missed assignment and should you go for it and touchdown versus field goal and do you defer and all of that stuff. All of that stuff would have been blown to smithereens if Jennings doesn't get held, because the Niners would have punted, Mahomes would have thrown to Kelsey twice, and Harrison Butker would have walked out and ended the game, and the Chiefs would have won 22-19.
And to that point,
that's exactly how it would have gone.
The sequence started in the overtime, pass, pass, pass. So that's where people, and I know there was a false start in there that made it 2nd and 15. Again, attention to detail. You come out at overtime, you throw it, incomplete, Ayuk with the false start. And, you're all eager to point fingers and say, I didn't get the ball enough. You put your team in 2nd and 15 because you couldn't, compose yourself on the line of scrimmage. You wanted to break out that badly.
He got duped by the CB. He pressed him. And
you can't get duped at that point, at that level.
But that's a good question that you're asking.
Attention to detail.
Right, but, I do struggle with this. I don't know the answer. Sure, your attention to detail as a group is the responsibility of the head coach. But then whittle it down to each act. Is it actually Kyle's fault that Brandon Ayuk went, that's Kyle's fault? No. Is it Kyle's fault or Wilkes' fault that Fred Warner, and it wasn't even Warner, but the Kelsey long play over the middle, total blown assignment.
It was Warner.
Okay.
He jumped to the inside.
Right.
He took away the inside leverage, and he got beaten to the outside.
Logan Ryan, we flinch, and touchdown, Mecole Hardman.
4th and 1, Nick Bosa doesn't know that they have zone read in there.
Burford goes the wrong way.
Luter has his foot in the wrong spot on a punt. All these things, they're not Kyle's fault, but they are Kyle's fault.
Yeah, I get it. Coach or player. We can get into it. 888-957-9570. In 45 minutes, we're going to have an extended piece of today's exit interviews, largely with Kyle Shanahan. Some very interesting questions and answers put out there, including the future of Steve Wilkes. Now, we also got to get to this Ayuk thing and the whole wide receiver core for the 49ers, because what the hell is up? What is going on?